Britishers first came to India for trade. They gradually built trading posts in India, built cities. They gained the Indian states using divide and rule politics, and after a few decades, they became the rulers of India. They sucked out our resources, killed our people, divided our country into multiple regions, and it took us many years to emerge out of it. But what if I tell you maybe this wouldn't have happened if a person named Robert Clive never existed? Would you believe? Who was Robert Clive? And what did he do that a small trading company like the East India Company could conquer the most prosperous Mughal empire with his help? What did he do that the Mughal emperor had to bow down to him and had to issue an order which changed our country's history forever? What did he do that our country became a colony of the British? In 1601, the East India Company first came to Indonesia for the trade of spices. Later, they moved to the Indian subcontinent for the opportunities in textile trading. At this time, the Mughal Empire was the most dominant empire in the Indian subcontinent, and Jahangir was the emperor. The East India Company sent a messenger to the emperor to take a grant and permission to trade in their empire. Jahangir gave them permission, and this was quite common. European traders would visit the emperor to ask for permissions even before this. By the end of the 17th century, the East India Company had built many trading factories in India, especially at Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. And Britishers were not the only European traders in the country. With them, India had Portuguese, Dutch, French, and Danish trader factories. However, these European traders not only built factories in India, they also built armies, and they would use these private armies to fight with each other, especially the British and French. However, when Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb died at the start of the 18th century, circumstances began to change rapidly. Mughal states which were once part of the empire went independent, resulting in the Mughal Empire becoming weaker. In short, no central authority was left to keep these companies in check. These companies blatantly started fighting with each other. They would destroy each other's ships and seize each other's cities and outposts. Like in 1746, the French company seized the British outpost at Madras, and this is where something happens. Madras's British garrison and employees were forced to take an oath not to take arms against the French. But a 24-year-old British company's ordinary clerk was against it. He was Robert Clive. Robert Clive, who was an ordinary clerk of the British company, didn't want to surrender in front of the forces of the French company. So he ran away from there to another nearby British fort, and he joined the company army there, whereas his post of clerk was better than that. You know why he did that? Because he wanted to take revenge on the French company. And he actually took the revenge by helping Major Stringer Lawrence in besieging the French outpost Pondicherry in 1748. Eventually, the French and British returned their respective cities to one another, but the fight to build an influence in the Indian subcontinent was still on. Whenever a fight would break out for the throne in any province, these European companies would support opposing sides. Like there was a province, Carnatic. In this province, Britishers had an outpost, Madras, and the French had Pondicherry. And when Carnatic's Nawab Chanda Sahib and Muhammad Ali Khan Walaja were fighting for the throne, these European companies joined the opposing sides. Britishers gave their support to a well-established Muhammad Ali Khan Walaja, and the French gave their support to Chanda Sahib. In 1751, Chanda Sahib besieged Trichinopoly with the help of French company troops, where Muhammad Ali Khan Walaja was present in the fort. Walaja's garrison was weak, ensuring Chanda Sahib had victory in his hand. Now it was on the British Trading Company to save Walaja, and they provided this task, you guessed it right, to Robert Clive, who was really smart for his age. Robert Clive attacked Chanda Sahib's capital city Arcot with only 200 British soldiers and 300 Indian sepoys. And the attack was so sudden that Chanda Sahib's garrison at Arcot Fort ran away. They presumed Robert Clive had attacked with a larger army. Chanda Sahib got the news of his capital city getting seized by Robert Clive, where he had to shorten his army at Trichinopoly to send to Arcot. But Clive defended Arcot for weeks, even though he had a smaller garrison, where he eventually won without doing anything special, and Muhammad Ali Khan Walaja became the Nawab of Carnatic with the support of the British Trading Company. While writing about this event, Clive's biographer says, "It may have been luck, it may have been bungling on the part of the enemy, but it created the legend of English courage and confidence that they could win any battle with the help of arms and army. Just because of this battle, which the company had won with the help of an ordinary 24-year-old company clerk who was born in a small town in England, who used to extort money from the vendors. His uncle had said he was a short-tempered kid who was addicted to fighting. He was a psychopath, and he could do anything for good money, and that's why he was in India. Otherwise, he didn't like India. However, he loved his country, and he wanted to return to his motherland as soon as possible. In 1753, he left India for England with whatever fortune he had made in India. He had plans to come back to India. However, destiny had something written for him. Robert Clive wanted to enter the British Parliament, where he lost all of his money, and after 18 months, he was on the ship to return to India. This was a small coincidence. He was forced to return to India. But the consequences of this small coincidence were widespread. Because if Clive had never returned to India, then a small trading company with a smaller office based in England never would have seized the power from the world's most prosperous Mughal empire. When Robert Clive was returning to India, there was turmoil in the politics of India's most prosperous state, Bengal. Britishers had a trading outpost in this state, Calcutta. Calcutta was really important for the East India Company. Their 60% textile export used to happen from Calcutta. Therefore, it was necessary to protect the city. Britishers wanted to renovate their William Fort, but before that, they didn't ask for permission from the Nawab of Bengal, Allahabad Khan. Learning this, Allahabad Khan got angry because Calcutta was a part of his state. He sent his messenger to the Britishers with a notice to stop the renovation. But before Narayan Singh could return, Allahabad Khan died on the day of 9th April 1756, and immediately his daughter's son, Siraj-ud-Dowlah, became the Nawab of Bengal. The day he became the Nawab of Bengal, he looted his own maternal aunt on that same day. He wanted to destroy or kill all the contenders for the throne. Therefore, when he was going to Purnia to kill his maternal cousin with a huge army, he met his grandfather's messenger, Narayan Singh, on the way, who was returning from Calcutta. He told Siraj that Calcutta's governor had imprisoned him. Now they have sent me away after insulting me. What respect do we have left? These handful traders who can't even wash their backsides are disrespecting an order from a Nawab. Siraj got furious after listening to that, and Siraj, with a huge army of 70,000, sieged the Britishers' most important outpost, Calcutta. By the evening, he destroyed half of the Calcutta city, even destroyed Fort William. He changed Calcutta's name to Alinagar and appointed his Hindu companion Raja Manikchand as the keeper of Fort William. But it was okay until now. Siraj committed such an act which could shock anyone's heart. He crammed in all the surrenders of Calcutta into a punishment cell. It was called the Black Hole. This was a small cell, 14 by 18 feet long. There was a small window, but there was no proper ventilation. Prisoners were not provided enough water. Some historians suggest that the prisoners who were kept in this cell numbered around 64. 43 out of them died in that cell due to heat exhaustion and suffocation. The British were angry. Yes, they were angry because their people were killed cruelly. Company authorities had to endure humiliation. They were traumatized. But the East India Company was more saddened by the losses they had to endure in business. The company's share prices were dropping rapidly. Their most important outpost, Calcutta, was in Siraj's possession. Due to this, the company was enduring losses in their trades, and obviously, they wanted Calcutta back. Call it fate, Robert Clive had just arrived from England to St. David Fort on the Coromandel coast. He found out about the Siege of Calcutta. However, the company didn't want to declare war on Siraj-ud-Dowlah because if they had lost, they might have had to leave the subcontinent forever. But Clive had money invested in Bengal, directly and indirectly, and for his personal loss. He convinced the company to take an aggressive approach against Siraj-ud-Dowlah. He knew that if the company won this war against Siraj, they could achieve great political power in Bengal. So he wrote this to his father: "If my next expedition is attended with success, it may enable me to do great things." After 2 weeks, Clive took back Calcutta from Raja Manikchand. But after 2 weeks, Siraj came back with an army of 60,000. Clive's army was much smaller than Siraj's army. But Robert Clive didn't fight ethically. He didn't believe in the rules of war, as he liked doing surprise night attacks. During the time of war, with the help of a foggy morning on the 5th of February 1757, Clive sent his sailors, soldiers and sepoys from further down the Hooghly River. They reached Siraj's camp by 6 a.m. and started firing at Siraj's camp with rifles and cannons. This sudden attack caused panic in Siraj's camp. The Mughal army started screaming and running everywhere. They started crushing each other in the stampede, and when they finally got their hands on their rifles, they precipitately started firing in the fog. They didn't even know where their enemies were. Siraj's camp's elephants and horses were running in the stampede. With the help of this stampede, Clive's army entered Siraj's camp without stopping the fire, and by 11 a.m. they came back by the way of Maratha Ditch. Clive lost 57 of his men, and Siraj had to lose 1,500 men, including 600 cavalry, hundreds of horses, and 4 elephants. This surprise night attack infused fear in the heart of a psychopathic person like Siraj-ud-Dowlah. Siraj was so scared that he sent the British an invitation for peace. The Treaty of Allahabad was signed between Siraj and the East India Company. This treaty fulfilled all the company's demands. They now had trading privileges, tax exemption on their goods, and they could keep their fort, and of course, renovate it and mint their own coins. It was Robert Clive who didn't want the company to go bankrupt because he had his investments there. And how kind was God to him, because after this, he got an offer that a greedy person like Robert Clive could never refuse. This offer was of £38 million in today's terms, and this offer caused a battle. And that battle caused British rule in India. After the death of Allahabadi Khan, when a psychopathic person like Siraj-ud-Dowlah became the Nawab of Bengal, many people were discontent, especially Siraj's own ministers. He would keep his ministers in fear. Siraj's cousin, Ghulam Hussain Khan, who was a scholar and was also part of Siraj's cabinet, wrote that Siraj was a bisexual rapist, was a psychopath. Everyone hated Siraj. Persian, Bengali, Mughal, French, English, nobody had anything positive to say about Siraj. Siraj had a bad reputation, but Siraj's biggest mistake was to mess up with Bengal's bankers, Jagat Seth. Jagat Seth was a Marwari Jain family. They were the richest people of Bengal. They were the bankers of Bengal. They used to lend money to Nawabs, trading companies, and even to Mughal emperors, and the Mughals had given the title of Jagat Seth to the chief of this family. The Jagat Seth family was so powerful that they could put anyone on Bengal's throne or dethrone anyone. Jagat Seth had helped Siraj's grandfather, Allahabadi Khan, to get Bengal's throne. Allahabadi had no sons, so he declared his daughter's son Siraj as his successor. And when, after Allahabadi Khan's death, Siraj became the Nawab, the Jagat Seth of that time, Mehtab Rai Chand, wasn't happy because Siraj used to extort money from him. And Siraj had even angered his chief military commander, Mir Jafar Ali Khan. After the fall of Calcutta, rather than appointing Mir Jafar as the keeper of William Fort, Siraj appointed his Hindu companion as the keeper of the fort, which made Mir Jafar furious. And now Mir Jafar wanted to become the Nawab of Bengal, and he could because he was in control of Siraj's 3/4 army. Basically, nobody liked Siraj-ud-Dowlah, and his own ministers wanted to dethrone him. But was it that easy to dethrone a Nawab of such a huge state like Bengal? No. Not a single conspirator had the confidence to dethrone Siraj. However, when Robert Clive defeated Siraj at Calcutta, these conspirators got the confidence, and all these conspirators went to meet Clive with an offer that a person like Clive would never refuse. This was happening for the first time in Indian history that some Indian businessmen were plotting with a private trading company, a company which had its own private army, to overthrow a regime which was becoming a threat to their business. But let me tell you one thing, nobody among these conspirators had the intention of British rule in India. But they didn't know that because of this conspiracy, the British would become the Nawab of Bengal themselves. Jagat Seth and Mir Jafar put an offer of £4.5 million in front of the East India Company, which was the 2-year annual revenue of the entire Bengal state. In current calculation, it is £600 million. This much money just to dethrone Siraj. They were also going to provide £110,000 to company troops every year, land ownership of some of the lands near Calcutta, rights to establish their own coin mint, and duty-free trade. In this offer, Robert Clive's share was around £234,000. In current calculation, it's £30 million. In Indian rupees, it's 320 crore rupees, plus a jagir, which would yield him £27,000 every year. In Indian rupees, 32 crore rupees. If Robert Clive had received this money, then he would have become one of the richest persons in England. On the 4th of June, the deal was finalized between the conspirators and the East India Company, Robert Clive. Siraj wasn't aware of this conspiracy. Siraj-ud-Dowlah and the East India Company were at war once again. Siraj-ud-Dowlah had moved his huge army to Plassey village on the banks of the Hooghly River. The French company was with him against the British. On the 23rd of June 1757, Clive's army reached the Plassey village at 1 a.m. There was a hunting lodge of the Nawab where Robert Clive took refuge to protect himself from the rain, and his not-so-lucky army took refuge under the mango orchards. A mud wall and a ditch were protecting Clive's army. Siraj's army had 60,000 people, whereas Clive's army had only 3,000 people. Anyone might think, how could Clive stand against such a big army of Siraj? Then let me tell you, Siraj's 3/4 army was under the command of Mir Jafar, and Mir Jafar, being one of the conspirators, was an ally of Robert Clive. As early as morning, Siraj's 1/4 army started moving towards Clive's small army, which was led by Siraj's loyal generals Mir Madan and Mohanlal. Clive ordered his army to come out of the mango orchard, and they started moving towards the Mughal army's left wing with their cannons, but Clive's army was getting exposed in front of Mir Jafar's army from the right. However, Mir Jafar didn't attack them. At 8, both armies started firing cannons at each other. The French cannons were better than the English cannons. The British army started suffering losses. Clive had to lose 30 sepoys. Noticing the losses, he ordered his army to move back. The French and Mughals kept firing. However, the mud wall and thick mango orchards protected the British army, but the positions of the Mughals were better than the British. A British officer has told this on record, where Clive had said, "We must make the best fight we can during the day, and at night sling our muskets over our shoulders and march back to Calcutta." Robert Clive and his army were losing this battle apparently. However, like always, luck favoured Clive when suddenly it started raining. By night, the battlefield became damp. The ground was covered in mud. The British used tarpaulin to protect their ammunition from the rain, but the Mughals didn't do that, and this mistake backfired on them. After just 10 minutes of rain, Mughal firing subsided because their rifles and cannons stopped working after getting wet by the rain. The British too stopped firing. This was their tactic. The Mughal cavalry commander, Mir Madan, thought that even the British cannons must have stopped working after getting wet in the rain. He ordered to charge his 5,000 elite Afghani cavalry on the British, but he didn't know. The fire of war was kept alive under a pile of embers. The British started firing on Mir Madan and his cavalry. They fired cannonballs, and in no time, the Mughal cavalry started getting slain, including Siraj's loyal general, Mir Madan, whose stomach was hit by a cannonball. Mir Madan was Siraj's loyal general. His death worried him. On the other hand, Mir Jafar, with his 3/4 army, wasn't doing anything to help him. Siraj-ud-Dowlah went to see Mir Jafar. He started begging in front of him, saying he should participate in the battle. Mir Jafar consoled him falsely that he would participate in the battle. However, when Siraj was returning to his camp, he was told by another conspirator named Yar-Dulab that they were all allied with Robert Clive. So it was better for him to retreat. Siraj retreated. He literally ran away. The Mughal army started retreating after the death of Mir Madan and Siraj's retreat. The British army started taking abandoned positions. The French and Mughal army started retreating. The English had won the Battle of Plassey. Thousands of men died in this battle. Mir Jafar got his throne. Jagat Seth got rid of Siraj-ud-Dowlah when the British killed him. And Robert Clive received his millions of pounds of bounty. You know, when Robert Clive was travelling to Madras with the flow of the Bhagirathi River, what he wrote to his father. A revolution has been effected scarcely to be paralleled in history. He meant how much an individual would have earned from a single battle. They would not have earned 320 crore rupees. After the Battle of Plassey, the balance of power shifted. The East India Company was now the dominant political and military force in Bengal. They learned after the Battle of Plassey that if they increased the size of their army, they could achieve any state of the Indian subcontinent. They could rule themselves or put a puppet ruler like Mir Jafar on the throne, a ruler who only listened to the company. Clive used to frequently write to the company committee citing the same things. I could have appropriated the whole country to the company. He wasn't satisfied after appropriating Bengal. When Robert Clive returned to England in 1760, he was one of the richest people in England. He bought properties everywhere in England and got a seat in Parliament. He was so rich that his cat had a necklace worth 3.5 crores. Can you believe it? A 3.5 crores necklace for his cat. And Robert Clive was only 35 years old. But do such people feel satisfied? Robert Clive, for the last time, returned to India. Because he was bored in England and India had opportunities to make money. But this time, he did not defeat any Nawab. He did not defeat any Mughal emperor. Instead, he made that Mughal emperor sign a treaty with which not only did the East India Company obtain the Mughal Empire, but they also became the supreme rulers of the Indian subcontinent. When Robert Clive returned to India for the last time, there was turmoil in the politics of Bengal. As you know, Bengal was run by the company. Mir Jafar was a puppet Nawab who would listen to the company. But being an army general, Mir Jafar lacked the skills of administration. So the company replaced him with his son-in-law, Mir Qasim. But let me tell you one thing about Mir Qasim. He hated the British and wanted to end their influence in Bengal. So with the fugitive Emperor Shah Alam II of the crumbling Mughal Empire and Oud's Nawab Shuja ud Dawla, he created a grand Mughal alliance to oust the East India Company out of Bengal. This was their last chance. With the help of this alliance, they could have ousted the East India Company out of the subcontinent. This decisive battle was fought at Buxar. The great Mughal alliances had 150,000 men, and the British had only 7,000 men, but still, the British won the battle. There is no harm in accepting that the British were well trained. They fought with discipline, unlike the Mughal army who used to run away from the battle. 3 great Mughal armies had come together to defeat the company and throw them out of India. If they had won, the British might not have ruled India, but they lost, and the company was the only dominant military force left in India. The same company which had once come to India for the trade of spices. Anyways, this battle changed the fate of India because again, when Clive returned to Madras, he was informed of the win the company got in Buxar. He was also informed that with Bengal, now Oud was also in their fists, and the Mughal emperor was ready to be their puppet. The smart Clive knew this positive news would influence the share prices of the East India Company. He immediately and secretly wrote to his agent in England, "Mortgage all my property and buy as many East India Company shares as possible." Why? Because he was going to make Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II sign a treaty that changed the future of India. Our present was changed by that one piece of paper. Clive also wrote to his company directors, "Mir Jafar is dead. We are in possession of Shuja ud Dawla's dominion. It is scarce hyperbole to say that the whole Mughal Empire is in our hands. Can it be doubted to say that a huge European army can preserve us the sovereignty in this country? We must indeed become the Nawabs, if not in name, and perhaps totally without disguise. We must go forward, for to retract is impossible. If riches and stability are the objects of the company, then this is the method. We now have the means for attaining and securing them." What was in that treaty? Clive first of all met Shuja ud Dawla at Oud. Robert Clive permitted Shuja to be the Nawab of Oud, and Shuja accepted because he was defeated in Buxar. Shuja was made the company's puppet Nawab so the company could suck out Oud's resources, and the defeated Shuja was happy with this. Next, Robert Clive met the defeated Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. He told Shah Alam II that if he wanted the protection of the company, then he would have to give the rights to tax the people of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa to the company. The East India Company wanted to financially control these prosperous states. If this happened, the East India Company could tax 20 million people. If we accounted for it annually, the tax would reach 2 to 3 million at that time. If we calculate with the inflation calculator today, the number goes to 3,500 crore rupees. Robert Clive knew that Bengal's huge tax revenue, which had kept the Mughal Empire alive till now, could yield supreme power to the East India Company, the power once held by the Mughals. With this money, they could capture the entire Indian subcontinent and make the East India Company's shareholders richer, which included Robert Clive. On the 16th of August, 1765, Shah Alam II signed the Treaty of Allahabad. In return, the company promised to pay him 26 lakh rupees annually. Examine this painting closely. This painting was painted by some English artist where Shah Alam II is presenting Robert Clive with the treaty. The weird fact is, this English artist, Benjamin West, never visited India. The mosque he had painted in the background matches the dome of St. Paul's in London. This painting is fake. What I mean to say is, the deal of this huge scale wasn't done in any palace. It was actually done on a small dining table in Robert Clive's small camp. Scholar Ghulam Hussain Khan says, business of such a magnitude as left neither pretense nor subterfuge at any other time would have required wise ambassadors and able negotiators. The East India Company and the King of England should have had a conference, but this business was done and finished in less time than would have been taken up for the sale of a jackass with the stroke of a pen in return for the modest payment of 26 lakhs. This treaty made the East India Company the emperor of the Mughal Empire. It made them so much money that in the coming years they increased the size of their army. With that army, they captured many other states of India, and in no time they became the rulers of India. Just because an ordinary clerk of the East India Company wanted to make some money. After some years, Robert Clive returned to England. He made so much money with East India Company shares that I'm pretty much sure his current generations are still enjoying that money. No doubt, Robert Clive wasn't the only person responsible for British rule in India. Many people, directly or indirectly, committed such acts that caused British rule in India. But these series of events were started by a greedy, psychopathic person who was born in England.